Hello and welcome to Case in Point. Great to be with you. I'm Joanne Joseph. After a 3-week live broadcast restriction of the Mapisa-Nqakula trial, the media prepares to broadcast the corruption case live.
I had met Mr. Mokgotsi, not met, spoken to Mr. Mokgotsi, sorry, on the phone once.
And is Fadiel Adams a whistleblower as he claims, or did he abuse his oversight powers as a parliamentarian? Media houses were preparing for the first broadcast of the former National Assembly Speaker and Defence Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula's corruption trial today, but it's been postponed to the end of August while her lawyers await the court transcripts. Mapisa-Nqakula is being tried for corruption and money laundering linked to alleged bribes from businesswoman Nombasa Ntsondwa-Ndlovu. She's pleaded not guilty. Still, media houses say they've secured an important victory for the public's right to know. Although the media was barred from airing the first part of the trial, SABC and eNCA secured permission to broadcast the rest of the trial. As Sebe Butelezi reminds us, their request brought up the question of open justice versus a fair trial for the accused.
Some court cases become national events. The 2014 Oscar Pistorius trial was one of them, a landmark case where for the first time a South African court allowed live television and audio coverage of a major criminal trial. But South Africans' appetite for high-profile matters goes back much further. From the Winnie Mandela and other testimonies at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearings, the Hansi Cronje confessions at the King's Commission, and other matters that have gripped the nation over the years and have become a norm to be broadcast live.
The Oscar Pistorius case came around at a time where social media was now a big thing. You now had court reporters sitting there and tweeting blow-by-blow updates of court proceedings. So I think it is important for those several reasons, one of them being that there was a change in the way court proceedings were being covered.
But what determines which cases receive media attention? We asked media lawyer and National Association of Broadcasters member Kgotsatso Mampa.
In South Africa, I always say we are really obsessed with personalities, and some of the more important cases actually don't get that kind of attention, like the access to water, access to healthcare.
South Africans are constitutionally entitled to open justice, which guarantees transparency, accountability, and protects freedom of expression.
Any media law issue requires us to start with Section 16 of the Constitution, and Section 16 of the Constitution really enshrines freedom of expression, and that includes freedom of the press and media. But what many people tend to forget is that, rights are not absolute. It's always a balancing of rights.
The 2017 Supreme Court of Appeal's ruling on the Van Breda case is another landmark ruling that entrenched open justice and freedom of expression rights, saying cameras are generally permissible in courts unless there's a demonstrable risk to a fair trial or the safety and privacy of witnesses.
A judge looks at whether it is in the best interest of justice, whether it actually impedes the administration of justice, as it were, and then makes a ruling based on that.
The restriction of the live broadcasting of the Mapisa-Nqakula corruption trial left many wondering, considering her high profile and the nature of allegations against her.
So the most beautiful thing about our legal system is that there is always the option of appealing. And so you can always appeal if you really feel that a different court will come to a different outcome based on the same facts.
The public wants to see justice. The media wants to report it. Those inside the court also claim their rights. Competing rights, all protected by the Constitution. Sebe Butelezi, Case in Point.
Well, joining me in studio to discuss this are Rosengarten and Feinberg partner and media lawyer Dan Rosengarten and founder and president of the Judicial Officers Alliance of South Africa, Neelan Karikan. So let me start with you, Mr. Rosengarten. Welcome, first of all. This was the second application the media brought to broadcast this trial live. On what grounds was your first application denied?
Well, firstly, it's nice to be here. The first application was denied for reasons which have since been which have previously been rejected as being spurious reasons, and that was that witnesses who were outside the court and had not yet testified would hear the evidence of witnesses inside the court, and that may taint their evidence.
So that's an interesting comment there from the judge, Mr. Karakhan. I'm wondering whether the justification provided by this judge not to allow the broadcast initially makes sense to you, considering it's undoubtedly of public interest.
You must understand as, thank you for having us, and just I appreciate it. Firstly, as judicial officers, it's difficult for us to pronounce on decisions and judgments made by other colleagues, firstly. But you need to also appreciate this. There's various dynamics that are at play. And as much as my colleague has been successful and was able to achieve the order that was sought, the cases that we deal with has to be done in an individualized fashion, because when one needs to determine whether the public at large needs to be entitled and needs to be allowed to have these proceedings visually disseminated, there is that impact about witnesses, the quality of a fair trial, the rights of the accused. So the presiding officer would have also considered that, and based on that, the likelihood is that is why the presiding officer came to that particular decision. But ordinarily and as a norm, open justice is what the basic principle is. And that's where we are at.
And that is a very interesting point indeed, because I love the way you argued this, arguing in favour of open justice, not for the media houses only, but for the benefit of the public. What exactly do we understand by the term open justice, Mr. Rosengarten?
Well, I think open justice can be described as justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. And when we talk about seen to be done, it's to be seen by members of the public. Now, a courtroom has 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 seats. But in matters such as the current one, where there's corruption by a state official, there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are interested. And that is the meaning of open justice, making it available to the public. And the broadcasters, as much as they champion their own right to freedom of the press, also champion the rights of the public, because Section 16 of the Constitution guarantees not only freedom of the press, but the right to, the public's right to receive information, and therein lies the principle of open justice.
You know, Mr. Karakhan, well, I'm very fascinated by this notion of communal catharsis, right? In a country where people know that there has been widespread wrongdoing and don't always see justice for it, but long for that. I mean, and I think that's probably the attraction to the Madlanga Commission right now, which millions of people are watching or listening to on the radio at any given time. I mean, tell me about the relevance of open justice to the lives of South Africans who need to see justice done where they have come to doubt the justice system, perhaps.
I hear you. Open justice is an essential imperative in the system as we find it right now. And you will notice that when you look at the Madlanga Commission and you look at the interest the public at large has on that, they are able to track, they are able to see justice in progress, the commission functioning efficiently. And similarly, when our court cases are televised, the public at large automatically has more and greater support, and they're more positive about the judiciary and the way we operate, because they can actually see how we operate, how questions are asked, because they can actually pick up if someone is not giving their best, someone is side-tracking, someone is side-skirting. All those issues are very relevant. And remember, when you're in the court system, it's an open court. It's open to the public. And when you televise, you are increasing the size of the courtroom. So in the normal cause, and case law currently supports that, and with the Van Breede case and the various other cases, you can see that there is clearly this drive to ensure that the public at large must be able to easily have access to the courts to see exactly how we function. Because when we restrict that process, it must be done only in exceptional cases where the witnesses' lives are in danger. You saw with the Madlanga Commission, people have been killed. So when those issues are at play, then it may be warranted where you might have to have the matters in camera, or you need to actually not allow television, just to protect the witnesses, you know. And we speak about the right to a fair trial and the accused. that person also needs to also be effectively protected. Because if everything just goes out there, then witnesses that potentially testify against those accused, then they already are privy to information. So I can understand the rationale of the judge, but at the same time, that issue was disposed of previously in terms of the Breda case and in terms of other cases where it was clearly shown that that argument doesn't really sustain itself at this point in time.
I find that very interesting, and I want to stay with that, Mr. Rosengarten, because of course you've got South Africans in far-flung areas who are not always able to access justice or access the courts, right? And they wouldn't be able to physically travel distances to be able to witness cases like this. But as part of living in a constitutional democracy, they're entitled to learn how democracy works or how justice works. They're entitled to observe that, to ensure that it is being done to the benefit of those involved in the trial as well as the country. How important is that factor? The factor that essentially you need to be able to make the observation of justice accessible to the people in every manner possible.
Yeah, I think that's key, and that underlies, as we spoke about a short while ago, the principle of justice, making it available as widely as possible. There are people who live a distance from the courtroom. There are people who come to the court and the court is full. Some of the courts are very small, some fit 100, 150 people. And the only way they're going to do that is if they're given access to the courtroom via live broadcasting or delayed broadcasting of court proceedings, be it in criminal trials, important civil trials, or even in commissions of inquiry, like we've seen in the Zondo Commission and currently in the Madlanga Commission.
So, Mr. Karakan, you spoke about the protection of witnesses who may not want to be shown testimony that needs to be heard in camera. I've gone through through the court papers here, and it's very interesting to see the judge has been very clear: no bright lights in the courtroom. A mid-shot as opposed to a close-up of witnesses' faces. And there's so many other requirements before you go into a court and film those proceedings. Would you give our viewers a sense of why that's so important?
Absolutely. Currently, as it stands, there are protocols and procedures in place, inclusive of the Magistrates Commission, because these matters are not only heard in the High Court, they're heard mostly in the Magistrates Court, as you see them in our television programs. So the reason why we need to actually proceed in this fashion, just bear with me, I just lost my train of thought. If you could just...
No, not at all. I'm talking about the issue of the regulations that media houses will have to
Sorry
follow.
about that. The guidelines have already been produced through the Magistrates Commission and through SANEF, and there's already been engagements with different stakeholders. Those guidelines are very important, and they're intended for specifically protecting witnesses, protecting stakeholders, protecting judicial officers, prosecutors, because the public at large, and amongst the public, we have to appreciate that there is a large level of criminality and corruption out there. So if we don't protect vulnerable witnesses, because quite often we have witnesses or victims of sexual offenses where they need to be protected. So the judicial officer has a wide spectrum of issues and protocols he can put in place when the order is made. For example, you are not allowed to have the camera facing the judicial officer, or should not be facing the witness, should only be audio. There's different things that can be put in place to protect that particular witness or that case, depending on that individual case. Every case can be dealt with differently. Right. And when they are dealt with differently, there might be different requirements. To have a blanket type of setup, just to have every case televised, I think they might experience difficulty, but clearly the trend is right now is to have all matters that are open to the public should be televised. I think the only restriction right now is the cost implication, data, bandwidth, and so forth. Because ordinarily, why shouldn't every case be televised as a matter of course? And then on the converse, only in exceptional cases, maybe this case should not be televised, or that witness should not be identified. So there's a balancing act, and the judicial officer has their duty. We cannot take away that discretion.
All right, we're going to take a short break now, but still to come on Case in Point. Does Open Justice distinguish between print media coverage of a high-profile trial and electronic coverage? We'll put that to our guests in a moment.
Advice that I can give to small businesses in South Africa is service your customers 100%.
Make hope part of your strategy.
Think big, but take small steps.
Do your homework first.
And get a clientele legal business plan.
You need professional legal services. Get a free tailor-made quote for your business today. SMS LAW to 48533 and we'll call you back. SMS now.
Welcome back. The relationship between court processes and media coverage in South Africa has changed over the decades, with the introduction of satellite channels offering 24-hour news, like this one, and a public hungry not just for constant news coverage, but for a greater sense of how justice is administered. That is what we're exploring with our guests at this hour. And Mr. Rosengarten, let me bring you back in here. You made an important distinction in your arguments between the effects of electronic media broadcasting versus the trial merely being covered in print, perhaps, or digital, as the case may be, or, for example, having a reporter outside the courtroom doing a summary of what happened in court over the course of the day. What's the fundamental difference between these types of media?
Well, the fundamental difference is the court reporter, not for the electronic media, but for the print media, comes in with their notebook, takes shorthand, or these days types it up on their mobile phone or their computer, and they don't get it verbatim. So they may miss things, they may miss nuances, and the very nature of their report is summarization. And that brooks error, whereas live television coverage doesn't brook any error. So you're hearing exactly what is said, and you're also hearing the nuances, and you're seeing how the witnesses behave. Are they evasive? Aren't they evasive? And so that's the fundamental difference. The fight has been going on since the King Commission, in which I was involved with Hansi Cronje, and a major argument was for freedom of expression to exist. You had to allow electronic members of the media to come into court with the tools of their trade. The tools of their trade aren't computers, they're not pens and books. The tools of their trade are cameras and microphones.
And I suppose an important aspect of this is, of course, interpretation as well, right? Because skilled though our reporters are, they are still filtering this through certain kinds of subjectivities, which, if you do a crossing to them, for example, will essentially ensure that they cover the salient aspects, but they're not able to give you the nuances of what happened over the course of the day, as opposed to a member of the public either watching that or listening to that.
Yeah, exactly right. You get a summary, you might get a long summary, you might get a good summary, but a summary is just not good enough for people who want to be inside the courtroom and see absolutely everything that happens. And you have to bear in mind that as a medium, television reaches more people than any other medium. There are people who are illiterate, there are people who don't have access to newspapers, there are people who have bandwidth problems and cannot look at anything and look up anything on their mobile phones. So this gives real and direct access. Open justice in the very real sense of the word.
Mr. Carrigan, let me ask you about this, because I know there are some concerns about whether the notion of open justice in any way compromises the accused's right to a fair trial. But you know, counterintuitively, isn't the accused publicly prejudiced in this case by her side of the story not being aired, while the state gets to make its case in full view of the public?
Well, I don't know whether you're referring to the specific case here, but if you're saying that the state's case doesn't get viewed in full view of the public?
It does get viewed, whereas her aspect of the case perhaps doesn't.
Doesn't get viewed.
Yes. Is that not in any way? I'm talking about the possibility of a trial by media here.
It can be problematic. It can be problematic without referring specifically to this case, but generally speaking, it can be problematic because if the state's case is aired effectively and widely, that implies that every state witness is publicly known, cross-examined before every other state witness comes through, and whilst the defense still has full access to all the witness testimony. And ultimately, the pressure that is being placed on the state is much more heavier because those witnesses now, they testify differently when they are placed before a camera. Now, there's a lot of emotions going on and they become almost like celebrities, but there is that danger element. And now if the defense comes through and testifies and doesn't have the same type of exposure, there's a degree of unfairness. As a starting point, there ought to be a degree of unfairness because these witnesses won't be put through the same prism as the state witnesses are. So I agree. It is problematic. There's a degree of unfairness. It should have been, or everyone should have been treated the same.
That was my sense from having read what was written about this. But Mr. Rosengarten, the state's already made its case. What remains to be filmed and broadcast now?
I think what remains to be filmed and broadcast is what is of substantial interest to the public. That is the evidence of the accused, as well as any other witness she may wish to call. And bear in mind, and one always has this right, it's an absolute right in terms of the Van Breda case, closing argument, judgment, any sentencing, any argument in mitigation or aggravation of sentence, all those things will be broadcast live now.
I mean, important information has already been given in this case about the alleged abuse of state funds, and I wonder how the public now, joining the fray or joining the broadcast on camera, sits there and perceives what has happened without knowing the full story. What is the responsibility of the media at this point, Mr. Rosengarten, in balancing the story so that what was actually missed on camera is actually conveyed in its entirety to the audience for the sake of fairness and balance?
Look, in terms of court reporting is a special skill, because it requires fairness and balance, whether you're writing for print media or you're reporting from outside the courtroom. You cannot just present one side of the case. You've got to present the examination and the cross-examination. And so with the state's case having finished now and people only having had second-hand access to it, and perhaps these are some guidelines as to how the next part should be broadcast. I think preceding the broadcast, the broadcasters should perhaps put together a program saying, tomorrow we're broadcasting the remainder of the trial, this is what's happened to date. And they'll have good records of that because it was, in fact, televised.
So, Mr. Garrican, how important are these cases becoming to how South Africans understand judicial processes in the country? I mean, we've had a range of these cases. Here we have a former minister, former defence minister, we have a former Speaker of Parliament who is on trial here. But I mean, the Van Breda's son, for argument's sake, was not someone who was well known to the public. It was simply a case that was of interest to the public because of the horrific nature of that case. Oscar Pistorius, another celebrity runner, you know, in the public eye. What lessons are being taught to the public here in terms of our judicial processes in this country?
Well, clearly this particular case is a very high-profile case, and the public at large wants to be informed. And the purpose for open justice, and in terms of the cases that have come out, clearly speak to ensuring that the public are well informed, they're enlightened, and they are demanding to know. And whilst they have that right to know and have access to our courts and ensure that open justice operates effectively, we obviously need to ensure that that balance between the right to a fair trial, the security of witnesses, that balance needs to be maintained. And right now, as it stands, it seems to me that there is no reason to not have proceeded in allowing the televisation of those proceedings, because it's high profile, it's in the public interest, and as Dan has pointed out, the largest audience would be through the television media, and the courtroom is very limited. So it makes proper sense that wherever possible, these matters ought to be televised. The public at large should be able to, in the comfort of their own homes, be able to watch how the justice system unfolds, how the judiciary operates, and whether this judicial system is actually working. It develops and builds confidence in the system throughout, whether it's private practitioners, the judiciary, the prosecution, and then you see the police and witnesses, and you get expert witnesses, forensic witnesses, and when they come and testify, the public at large, they're automatically being educated, they're learning new avenues of law, and when they get into court, they won't be surprised. A lot of our people are scared to go into court because they don't know how the courts work, and it's new to them. So even if they want to say something, they are reluctant to say so. But because of the vastness of media and allowing the system to unfold, I think it can only bring positives. And our case law already points to that direction. Open justice is generally the way to go. To restrict that openness, it has to only happen in limited situations.
I remember hearing that after the Oscar Pistorius trial, a lot more students signed up for law at university. So, Dan Rosengarten, future cases of this kind, what kind of precedent do you feel you've set, having fought this case and won it?
You know, what I was thinking is that in the current environment, and given our recent history and state capture and the levels of corruption that have happened, there is no reason whatsoever for any court to say you cannot broadcast and televise a trial involving corruption of a public figure, such as in the current trial, the ex-Minister of Defence and Speaker of the House. I think there has to be an absolute right. I did a recent case last year of the ex-mayor of Durban, Gumede, in which we were precluded and got access. So I hope the lesson learned is that the fallback position is absolutely you can film it, and if there's a witness who has a real objection, a witness by witness analysis as per Van Breda, then you look at that individually and you try and make other arrangements.
Mr. Karakan and Mr. Rosengarten, thank you so much for your insight into this fascinating story. We look forward to watching that broadcast from the 31st of August. Now, when we return, did Fadiel Adams act as a whistleblower, or did he abuse his oversight role as a Member of Parliament? We'll discuss this issue after the break. Stay with us.
Know all about tax, don't you?
Yes, I've been working for the tax men for years now.
So you did the audit and OUTsurance came out top?
It came out the best. I'm saving 802 Rand per month.
The price almost dropped you.
Drop your old insurance so that you can save a lot of money.
Just like Sylvia.
Go to outsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands.
I'm with OUTsurance Essential because it's affordable and it's perfect for an older car. Without my car, I wouldn't be able to do school drop-offs, go to work, or go to the supermarket. It's important to be insured in case of accidents, thefts, anything happens these days. I'm covered up to 1 million Rand in third-party damages. If I'm not insured and I'm in an accident, it would affect my livelihood. It would take years to recover and get my money back.
SMS car to 40934 for a quote that fits your pocket.
Thanks for staying with Case in Point. Well, it's been 2 interesting days at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria. National Coloured Congress suspended MP Fadiel Adams has been testifying there after a false start last week. He's at the centre of a controversial chain of events that saw a police minister go on special leaves, senior crime intelligence officials and a police commissioner facing trial, and the head of IDAC resigning. Adams says he received sensitive crime intelligence documents and wanted state institutions to investigate investigate the serious allegations contained in them. But is he really a whistleblower, or did he abuse his oversight role as a Member of Parliament? Before we explore this question, let's watch this insert compiled by Mfundo Msomi about where it all began.
An obscure political figure and founder of the National Coloured Congress, Fadiel Adams, joined Parliament after the 2024 general elections. That's until the 6 July 2025 press conference by KwaZulu-Natal's Provincial Commissioner, Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi.
I can confirm before the South Africans today that the investigation which these members were involved with in Gauteng has unmasked the syndicate. And this syndicate involves, amongst others, politicians who are currently serving in Parliament.
Mkhwanazi alleged criminal infiltration and political interference in the criminal justice system and attempts to disband the political killings task team, suspected on clamping down on these criminal networks. He later named Adams as the parliamentarian who suspiciously obtained classified documents implicating him in the alleged conspiracy.
Mr. Adams sends another email, now with a different content, same complaint, but now he believes this time around he is talking to what the National Commission has done, but yet he has not been able to engage with the inspectorate. So I don't know how is he privy to the National Commission's report that is directed to the minister.
But Adams denies the allegations, saying he found a brown envelope in his parliamentary office containing crime intelligence documents, pointing to corruption, irregular appointments and secret funds abuse. He filed 3 cases in Cape Town and another 3 in Johannesburg, after the late General Andre Lincoln apparently advised that his dockets had been interfered with.
General Lincoln said something. He was normally spot on.
Okay. So he was your source for those other...
In these cases, ma'am, and in others, but this was the man. He was my go-to.
A chain of events have raised questions about whether these incidents occurred by chance, including a meeting at the now suspended Inspector General of Intelligence, MTS Fazel's office, and his emailed complaint to then Police Minister Senzo Mchunu office, which was almost immediately sent to IDAC for investigation. Testimonies at the Madlanga Commission reveal that despite being thin on evidence, Adams' Section 27 referral resulted in IDAC instituting unauthorized investigations and manipulated evidence.
Prosecution-led investigations, if correctly done, is a brilliant method. But as it stands, it is left open to manipulation, and it has been manipulated by and used by Advocate Johnson and Mr. Perumal.
Adams distances himself from IDAC's alleged abuse of power and says he acted as a whistleblower. He alleges that his arrest for alleged interference with Sindiso Makaka case was victimization by the political killings task team for raising concerns about their operations and use of funds. He has since opened cases of corruption and defeating the ends of justice against IDAC officials, Dylan Perumal and Brian Padayachi. Mfundo Msomi, Case in Point.
With us in studio to discuss this matter is constitutional lawyer Ashley Sekol and Professor Ntwanano Matebula, public governance analyst from the University of Johannesburg, who joins us online. Welcome, gentlemen. Lovely to have the both of you with us. Well, let me start with you, Mr. Sekol. All of this began with the confidential documents that Fadiel Adams said were slipped under his door. What should have been his first course of action if he suspected this was evidence that required investigation?
Joanne, firstly, good evening to you and thanks for having me here. We've got a constitution that is binding to each and every one of us. We're a country that believes in the rule of law, and the rule of law dictates, and this is now in terms of Section 55 of the Constitution, that Parliament must have, and this is the National Assembly to be more specific, must have mechanisms for oversight. And one of those mechanisms that we have are portfolio committees. So you've got a police portfolio committee, you've got the joint standing committee on intelligence. So what should have rightfully happened argument is that Mr. Adams, as a member of parliament who, understands this type of processes, should have at least taken those documents to either one of these committees. Of course, we've seen that his argument is that at the time there was no joint standing committee on intelligence. And that is because just after the 7th administration, there was a delay in the constitution of the JSCI. But maybe we'll get there later. I mean, I think he could have waited, or he could have taken it to the Police Portfolio Committee, which was rightfully constituted from July 2024.
I mean, it's very important that you are mentioning these details, because of course they all have an influence on how exactly he should have acted. But Prof, let me ask you this, that there's also, in addition to the bodies that Mr. Sekol has mentioned, the Inspector General of Intelligence. There's also the Speaker of Parliament. Why would Fadiel Adams not have known that he could have gone or should have gone to these particular entities?
Hi, good evening, and good evening to the viewers. It should not be about whether Fadiel Adams knows where to go. I think for me, we should always ask why is it that he acted in a manner that he did. Today, he has labeled himself as a whistleblower, but according to the testimony that we have seen at the commission, it says something different. And for me, it seems as if there is a bigger motive, as you would have rightfully said. The Minister of Police, who's on suspension now, Mr. Senzo Mqunu, who appears to be unduly interfering in IDAC matters. We have seen the report that has since emerged from the IGI, which was found in his hands. This is not about whistleblowing. This is everything that has to do with political interference, which is looked at in the eye of oversight. I think what we're seeing here is a gross political interference and conspiracy and undermining the rule of law, whereby we see politicians using whatever means possible to influence the workings of the criminal justice system and most importantly, the South African Police Service. Mr. Adam does know what he ought to have done, but he decided otherwise because he did not even think about blowing the whistle. This is about him and political point scoring and some other motives that we do not know about in terms of the evidence that has since emerged in the Madlanga Commission.
Yeah. Mr. Sekol, how would the entities that you spoke of within Parliament have proceeded with the information had Fadiel Adams handed it over to them?
So let's understand the process. So there's a constitutional mandate on the National Assembly to establish these mechanisms. The National Assembly has a set of rules. I think they like in their 9th edition now. Those rules, and I want to just maybe specifically look at rules 227, for instance, 2271C of the National Assembly rules. What that rule empowers the National Assembly to do is to hold state of organs accountable. For instance, when it comes to staffing issues, one of the things that you'd have realized and that came up from the Section 27 report and the cases that were opened by Mr. Fadiel Adams were aimed at 3 individuals. You've got General Khumalo, you've got General Lushaba, and I cannot remember now, I think is it Mabunda or something like that, right? And they had to do with the employment of a staff member that was allegedly unqualified. Parliament and the National Assembly specifically has mechanisms in place to subpoena these people. If you look at Rule 167, for instance, they've got the power. The Constitution mandates them in terms of Section 56 that they can call people, look into these things, make recommendations or make findings, if they've determined that there's a prima facie case that needs to be answered, for instance. This could have avoided the scenario that now Mr. Adams finds himself in, because one, he did not subject himself to those processes, and he says that the reason why he didn't subject because he feels that members of Parliament, just glorified servants without the necessary investigative powers. But the other side of it now, where he finds himself in, is that the investigations have now been done. We've listened to the testimony of the head of IDAC, Advocate Andrea Johnson, and it now turns out that there was no prima facie evidence. And in fact, this one candidate was very much qualified and suitable for the position that she was appointed. Now, and I want to agree with my learned colleague to say that it begs the question that, so what was the motive? What was the intention? Because now when you see it, it looks like the complaint was then weaponized, for political purposes, seemingly, that's what we are seeing. Whereas you could have subjected yourself to these parliamentary processes, perhaps those parliamentary processes would have come out and indicated that there is no case to answer to and there is no evidence for the allegations that are being made. And perhaps I must just say, Joanne, that it is quite interesting because Mr. Fadiel Adams is the same person that we have seen also going to the media and saying that Parliament has absolved him from any wrongdoing. So the same processes that he lacks confidence in, he does not utilize them as well, to allow others also to go through the same process, and perhaps the outcome was going to be the same as was in his case.
Yeah, interesting indeed. Prof, as it is, Fadiel Adams is alleged to have made copies of the classified documents he says were slipped under his door. Then he went on to open cases at a number of police stations, interestingly not all in the same province. He leaves Cape Town at that point. He comes to Gauteng. He opens cases at Orlando Station, it's a police station. Firstly, should a parliamentarian know that top secret information land in his lap? That information shouldn't be copied, nor should it be distributed at station level. And secondly, does it seem strange to you that he came to this particular station to open up the cases?
I don't think South Africans should trust what Fadiel Adams is saying. He cannot be trusted. Remember, this is one member of parliament who's accused of interference in the matter of the late ANC Youth League Secretary General, Sindiso Magaka. But another thing that we have seen is continuous contradictory statements before the commission, and the concessions that they have already made. Is there being accused as being part of the scheme or the conduit of cartels? But as you are posing a question, should Fadiel Adams be in possession of these documents? I don't know. It's up to South Africans to decide whether anybody in the country, including Fadiel Adams, should be possessing such documents. But another thing that we have seen, it's not only him that form part of this scheme of members of parliament who are seen to be having a hand on classified, confidential and top secret documents. We have had Ian Cameron of the Democratic Alliance getting implicated. We know Mr. Julius Malema has been implicated in as far as it relates to General Feroz Khan. This is one of the top guys at intelligence who used questions which were contained in classified documents to weaponize them against other politicians in parliament. We have again had Advocate Ramsamy coming on very strong to say that even Darlene James of the Action SA should be looked at as one of those people who are having these classified documents. So the picture that arises here is that we see politicians who are conniving with the law and state institutions to run a parallel state. This is something for me that should be looked at very seriously. It can be tantamount to a coup d'etat, because here we have a legitimate state, but we have other elements and tendencies that are seeking to weaken that state and controlling them. But you would have heard in the Madlanga Commission that Mr. Adams was pressed very hard about his choice of the police station, the case that was opened in Orlando and in Langlaagte. But again, the agency has also been questioned before the commission, and I haven't seen him coming out clear to explain the rationale for taking some of those decisions that we have seen him taking, as was explained before the commission.
A very quick one, Mr. Sekkel. For one thing, Adams keeps saying he took his lead from late Police General Andre Lincoln. Very difficult to verify, with Lincoln having died. But does it also suggest that he, as an MP, or others whom the Prof has just mentioned, are not familiar with the processes they ought to follow when it comes to reacting to unusual circumstances where classified information gets into their hands?
And that's the $1 million question. That what what is the motive? You know, are there bigger things out here at play? Because as you mentioned, you know, General Lincoln's name now coming in after his death, conveniently so. Of course, you know, it's very hard now to confirm the veracity of what could have transpired. What I can, you know, say is at the end of the day, we must abide by the rule of law. And when you look at the agency, which has also, you know, come under scrutiny, that why did you move with so much haste as you did? You go and open a case at Grand Central, and then immediately thereafter, you know, you're on a flight in October, and now you're finding yourself in Orlando. And by the way, the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence was then constituted about 4 months later. You know, what was this prejudice that you could have suffered, that waiting 4 months and then tabling it before the right committee? Or, as I mentioned earlier on, that the Police Portfolio Committee was already constituted. So, you know, it begs the question, and it doesn't help when, you know, you pick up that the same report or complaint that was made was then weaponized and used for what now seems to have been a political matter more than anything else. You know, I was watching the Madlanga Commission, Johan, the one time that they were interviewing Witness E regarding this Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula case, and you would recall that, you know, there was a time when the chairperson asked the gentleman that you get information that there is somebody that is going to be murdered, and that the people who are involved are your superiors, and then the first thing that you do with that information is that you go and give it to your superiors who are implicated. What exactly were you hoping to achieve? And perhaps the same can be asked of Mr. Adams as well, to say that you are complaining that you've received this classified information which relates to what is happening in the intelligence space, and yet you go and report this matter to the juniors of the same, you know, senior leaders. What exactly were you hoping to achieve? Unless, you know, if there was another motive that you just needed to lay a base and then somebody else, you know, were to run with that information. So these are some important questions that still need, you know, to be asked.
Yeah. Well, let's continue the conversation about them in a moment. When we come back, was Fadiel Adams acting out of stewardship over worries that criminal networks may have infiltrated crime intelligence, or was he pitting crime-fighting officials against one another? We'll chat more about this after the break.
I have dropped in because I've heard you've had a major premium drop.
Yes, my saving now with OUTsurance is 479 Rand per month. OUTsurance is giving me now a lifeline. If you look at our economy, everything has become so expensive.
Yes.
And now that's the third card insured with OUTsurance. So we are really saving quite a lot. You too can save with OUTsurance.
You can save.
Go to outsurance.co.za now for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands.
Welcome back. An even more disturbing picture is emerging as more has been revealed about what happened between the role players in the saga. Today, Fadiel Adams admitted he spoke to self-styled political fixer Brian Mokhotsi, who suggested he open a case at the Orlando police station, the same police station he used in other related matters. Mokhotsi is known to have interacted with Minister Senzo Mchunu, Kat Matlala, General Sibiya and others on their concerns about the PKTT. Some quarters are reading this as a circle that may have conspired to destabilize the criminal justice system. Here's Adams' revelation.
Mr. Adams, there was a lot of activity in December 2024, and a lot of it involved Mr. Brown Mokhotsi assisting people with opening cases in Soweto. Did you, by any chance, speak to Mr. Brown Mokhotsi around November, December 2024?
General Lincoln was in contact with Mr. Brown Mokhotsi, who he told me was someone that was close to the minister, something that I now know to be a lie, not from General Lincoln's side. I had met Mr. Mokgotsi, spoken to Mr. Mokgotsi, sorry, on the phone once.
Take it slow. When did you speak to Mr. Mokgotsi?
I couldn't tell you if it was November of 2024 or December of 2024 or January of 20, but I had spoken to him on the phone once.
Let's go straight to Professor Ntwanano. Of course, Prof. Adams says when he was arrested in May, he got to understand the relationship between crime intelligence, the PKTT, senior police and other investigating bodies. And he concluded he was right to be concerned about the independence of these institutions, their accountability, whether there was proper oversight over them. Do you think he makes a valid argument about how these entities are intertwined, or should they be for the purposes of cohesive investigations, Prof?
I would still maintain that what is at play here is a deliberate weakening of governance systems in the SABC and the criminal justice system. And as I've said, that Fadiel Adams is here to answer questions that relates to him being a conduit to facilitating cartel networks. And I think the fact that they admit to being untruthful in most of his answers, people should also understand that he is at the center of what we now know as the Section 27 referral, which triggered the investigation into the IDAC matter. And we come to now understand that there are bigger role players, the suspended Minister of Police, Mr. Brian Padiache and Mr. Perumal. Mr. Adams is one person who has history in politics, but also is an experienced South African to understand the Constitution. And worse off, this is a member of the Portfolio Committee. He should know better than many of us. Let us stop sugarcoating what we are seeing here. We are seeing a scheme which is driven by politicians who masquerade as if they are in Parliament to ensure that there's accountability through portfolio committees, while they know exactly what it is that we are doing. We know what whistleblowing is all about. We have heard about the case of Babita Diokaran and the institutions that she chose to use in blowing the whistle. We should also ask ourselves, the type of wrongdoing that is being exposed, is it worth going the length that Mr. Adam does? It's something that we need to ask ourselves.
A question about what we ought to expect of our MPs' conduct, Mr. Sekol. We've seen the way Adams has addressed Justice Madlanga in the last couple of days. I think the Prof and you have both made reference to the Sindiso Magatra case that he intervened in, where he was accused of interfering with a very sensitive police investigation. A few years ago, the Equality Court found his social media posts against a former Cape Town city manager racially offensive, right? And last year, the Joint Committee on Ethics and Members' Interest found Adams had breached Parliament's ethics code by making insulting remarks about the DA's Jordan Hill Lewis and another member of the DA. Does this meet the standards of decorum required of a member of Parliament in South Africa?
Certainly not. You know, it's been quite alarming, you know, to seeing some of these things play themselves out before the Madlanga Commission. I think one of the statements he actually made was that, no, forget about what was posted. These things happen, you know, let's move on. No, we cannot simply move on. It is imperative that we remember that Mr. Adams is an MP and not a P. And maybe let me just clarify, he's a member of Parliament and not Parliament. There are a set of rules and decorum that one must abide by. And you cannot unilaterally decide that certain mechanisms are unsuitable for you or they do not serve the purpose, you know, that you wish to achieve. And so you're going to take the law into your own hand. That just obliterates the rule of law and it gets rid of certainty and everybody can do as they please. I mean, if you look at the Sindiso Magatra case and the allegations that he interfered with Mr. Nkosi, you just wonder how does one, and I know that that case is still playing itself out. You've got the rules of the National Assembly, which are very clear, by the way. You've got Rule 261, which sets out the circumstances under which there may be a sitting outside the premises of Parliament, which can only happen with the permission of a chief whip. But even more damning is that you've got Rule 361, which sets out that, you know, when when you are dealing with someone that is incarcerated, how that needs to happen. You need to have the Speaker of Parliament make a request, which must then be, commissioned off by the Secretary. You don't unilaterally rock up into a prison. So it seems like here there's just a frustration of rules, or just a complete ignorance of the rules by a Member of Parliament, and that is extremely concerning.
Perhaps we need to revisit those rules and re-educate our parliamentarians about what is required in that regard. Thank you so much for your insights, Mr. Sekol. Professor Matebula, lovely having you with us on the program this evening. All right, through the Act, members of the public are entitled to decisions by organs of state that strictly follow the law and stay within their legal power. Rational, sensible and justified decisions based on the facts provided receive adequate notice of a proposed action and a fair chance to be heard before a decision harms your rights, to request adequate written reasons within 90 days if an administration or administrative action affects you negatively, the right to appeal and review decisions having received a clear notice regarding any internal appeal options or reviews made available. Before we wrap up our show tonight, if you're facing a legal or justice issue that you'd like us to explore, please email us on caseinpoint@sabc.co.za. That is a wrap from us for tonight. We'll see you next Thursday at 8 p.m. Take care from me. Bye-bye.